Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Basschaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. Today, I have as my guest a pro that has won over $700,000 in tournament earnings. And, you know, this guy is a really good friend of mine. And so many of the pros contacted me after my wife passed away, and it was just so moving. But Brandon Card is my guest today. Brandon drove all the way from High Rock Lake to Greenville, South Carolina to be at my wife's funeral. Really, really good friend of mine today. I am very excited to welcome as my guest on the Basschaplain Fishing Podcast, all the way from North Carolina. I say he's from North Carolina, but he's from a lot of different places. Well, we're going to have a great conversation today. Stay tuned. Brandon Card from the Bassmaster Elite Series is up next on the Basschaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing do hook up. Back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Basschaplain Fishing Podcast. I have as my guest today, all the way from North Carolina, Brandon Card. Brandon, we are glad that you're here today, man.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we finally got to do this. We've been talking about it for months now. We're just now getting around to it.
We have, and I wore my colors for you today, man. These are my Brandon Card colors here. I got pulled out my shirt there, man. I tell you what, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and you're always at all my I don't know what we call it, focus meeting, Christian angler meeting, whatever it is that we do on the Bassmaster Elite Series. But man, I appreciate that. And listen, I got some big news for you. Let me tell you how good of a friend Brandon is to me. It just about every tournament, if I don't bring a rod, which is usually all of them, he always lets me borrow a rod. And this time I have two of your rods in my car right now, ready to go to the next event. But you hooked me up with a big pack of Senkos, man. And I didn't use them all. I was a good steward of my Senkos. There's probably about 40 of them left out of that 50 pack. But you gave me that up at when we were in New York. And man, I caught fish off the bank. I was just in heaven up there. I had a great time. I appreciate you letting me use all that stuff, man.
That was a blast for everybody involved. I mean, I went out there and caught over 20 pounds of fish every day and finished in 40th. So, I mean, it's just a phenomenal fishery. Of course, you were having to fish it from the bank.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it don't matter whether you're fishing for smallmouth or largemouth up there, really anywhere in New York. It's so much fun to get up there. It's just, I would love to have a second home up there.
I would too.
It's just such a neat place.
I would too. You know, I've thought about getting a camper and just putting it up there. I told a friend of mine up there, so listen, you just give me a quarter of an acre of land and I'll just rent it from you and I'll put that camper out there. And what a great place. All my friends in South Carolina, they go, I can't believe that you're going to ride all the way to New York. And I'm like, man, you have no idea. It's awesome up there. It really is. So let's talk about a couple of things that are going on in your life. Now, everybody says this, but I don't know any other way to say it. You're a new dad and you got a new baby. Now, I mean, there are no such thing as old babies, but you know, so how is it, man? How's the dad life, man?
It's been incredible. I mean, he's a little over 10 months now, and he's just so much fun, just such a blessing, just a gift from God, really. But he's into everything right now. He's really wanting to walk, but he can't quite figure that out yet. So he's pulling up on everything and crawling, and it's a really fun age right now because he's just all over this house. I'm having to kid proof it from top to bottom. I've been putting up baby gates and putting all the little foamy pieces on every single corner in this house. And
yeah, that's a fun age. Man, listen, whenever I get depressed, whenever I get down, I always go to your Instagram and I watch your baby's laughing photos. That is the happiest baby. I'll tell you that you can, folks, if you've never seen, the Instagram videos of him laughing, you cannot be sad and watch that child. I'm telling you, that it's awesome. He's just hilarious. He just laughs, man.
He'll brighten your day. I should probably put more up there. I just didn't want to be that dad that's, every single week posting videos and photos of their baby. But honestly, like, he does have one of the best laughs that I've ever heard. Of course, I'm biased, but
Right.
yeah,
He
like,
does. He's got a great laugh. That's a happy baby. I tell you that really is cool. It
and
really will brighten your day.
Kelly can just get him going, and like I just pick up the phone and she's getting going, and he will just belly laugh at the best of them. It's awesome.
That is really cool, man. That's an awesome deal. So listen now, whenever I tell people where you're from, I don't even, I don't even think I could trace back your origins. You've lived in so many different places and you're from so many different places. Where do you, what do you say you're from? What do you, when people say, hey, where are you from? Where do you say you're from?
I guess it's easier to say what my home lake is, like where I grew up fishing, and that would be Norris Lake, Tennessee.
Okay.
So that's maybe a little bit easier than all the little towns that I lived around Norris Lake. Like, through my childhood, I lived in Caryville, I lived in Jacksboro, La Follette. So basically, but we were around Norris Lake. So that's where I grew up, was Norris Lake. And then in college, I went to University of Kentucky. So I was up there for 4 years in Lexington, Kentucky. And then after college, I moved back home. So I was living in Tennessee, but then it was kind of like Knoxville. Also lived in Dandridge, Tennessee.
Right.
So now my wife and I, we've been married now for like 7 years. And 2 years ago, we moved to Salisbury, North Carolina. So that's currently where we're living right now. But we have never lived, since we've been married for 7 years, we've never lived at a place for more than like 2 years. So
Wow.
just give us a couple more months and we may move again.
You've got a great place there. I've actually been to your house over there on High Rock Lake, and man, that's a great place. But yeah, but you went to the University of Kentucky. Now I got my Gamecock thing up here for you, right there. I know, but the reason I do that, I've had every fan, and I know there are going to be people that get on me for being a Gamecock fan, but I've actually had a Clemson Tiger interviewed on this podcast before. So I've been very fair and very deal, but all of my Gamecock.
Is it Andy that was the?
No, it was Glenn Chapelier. Yeah, actually, I've had two. Glenn is a Clemson Tiger. Glenn actually played for the Clemson Tigers. He actually played on the football team. And so Andy attended Clemson and, got a degree from Clemson. But so I guess I've had two Tigers on here. So I hadn't had a Gamecock fan on. So, that's pretty wild. But yeah, it's really funny about South Carolina fans when you talk about Kentucky, because you went to Kentucky, but you're a Tennessee guy. And I know that, that probably caused some controversy, around where you're from, didn't it?
It definitely did, because I grew up a Tennessee fan. My dad actually took my brother and I to Peyton Manning's last home game, which was really neat. So I'm still a Tennessee fan. So I don't know how you can be a Tennessee fan and a Kentucky fan at the same time, but I am. I may be the only person. I may be the only person on planet Earth to be a fan of both teams, but I'm that guy.
That's definitely an alien concept, because I know you can't be a Clemson fan and a South Carolina fan. And so, that Tennessee, it's really wild about Tennessee is that every year South Carolina fans, we know I've got all the fan bases ranked as what is the most delusional fan bases, and South Carolina is right up there with the most delusional fan bases in America. But they always say, my buddy the other day, he said, well, we're going through the win list. Who they think going to beat? Well, we're going to beat Kentucky. I'm like, we hadn't beat Kentucky in 7 years, man. What are you talking about? Kentucky owns us, man. And so it was, that was pretty wild. But, everybody, hope springs eternal this time of the year. But we're going to get to fishing talk now. Now, let me ask you, tell me, how in the world did you become a professional fisherman? What was your journey? I know the folks out here, they love to hear, how did you become a pro bass fisherman and get to the Elite Series? What was that story?
Well, basically just by the grace of God. It was always a dream of mine since a very young age. My dad and mom always took my brother and I fishing. My brother, he's 2 years older, Jordan, and they always took us fishing. My dad's a big fisherman. My mom's dad, my grandpa, he was a big fisherman. And so it was just kind of in our blood at a very young age. And there's pictures of me literally in diapers holding a rod on the lake bank. And so that's kind of how we grew up. And I didn't know that professional fishing existed probably until I was about 6 or 7. And like it was a Sunday morning, 10 in, and we turned on the TV, and the Bassmasters popped up. And my brother and I were like, "What is this, Dad?" Because my dad's not a tournament fisherman. He just likes to go fish and just catch whatever's biting.
Right.
So I think he's only fished like 3 or 4 tournaments his whole life. And so we like started asking Dad, like what is the Bassmasters? And he's like, well, those are professional fishermen. And we were just blown away. We were like, so people, this is how they make money. And he was like, yeah. And we both looked at each other and we were like, we want to do that.
Yeah.
And so basically from that point on, my brother and I, we were just obsessed with bass fishing. Like, Dad wanted to still take us go, bluegill fishing and shell cracker or whatever. And we just wanted to catch bass. Like it didn't matter. Like we were all about bass from that point on. And so my brother's 2 years older than me. And once he started driving at 16, we started like fishing just some small tournaments, some small club tournaments. And so I was 14 and he was 16. And we fished a lot of those out of a 16-foot aluminum boat with 25 horsepower. And we just had a cooler with a makeshift aerator, and just had fun with it early on. And then we gradually kind of started kind of working our way up a little bit and fished some bigger team events. And then even in high school, my brother and I started to dabble around in some of the BFLs and the Bassmaster Weekend Series events and stuff like that. And so that kind of takes me all the way through high school. And then once I graduated from high school, I started hearing about college bass fishing, and it was just starting to like gain a little bit of traction. I think it had been around maybe 2 or 3 years. And so at the time, it wasn't like it is now. Like now, every single college known to man pretty much has a bass fishing team, which is awesome. Like, I mean, that's the coolest thing ever. But in 2004, when I graduated from high school, there was probably only 30 or 40 teams in the nation that had schools in the nation that had college bass fishing. And so University of Kentucky was one of those schools. And I was also looking at University of Kentucky because they had a really good landscape architecture program. And that was the degree that I had wanted to do ever since I was little. I always loved landscaping. I loved architecture. And so that's kind of what led me to University of Kentucky. And them having a bass fishing team was just kind of icing on the cake, if you will. So went up there, and that's kind of when it started to take off for me. I started to travel around and compete in these college events, and all the way up until that point, I had pretty much only fished in Tennessee. My dad would take us on a few summer trips when we were little. We went to Minnesota, and like we got to experience some really phenomenal fishing at a young age. But as far as competitive fishing, it had just been around that Knoxville area in Tennessee. So college bass fishing is what, broadened my horizons. We did several big events down in Texas, competing in college national championships down there. Was able to fish in Arkansas, the Bassmaster College National Championship. And so I feel like that's kind of what propelled me into where I am today. I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for college fishing, because that's kind of where I went from a local, just having fun, a local weekend tournaments to really starting to take it serious. And that's kind of that's kind of what got the ball rolling. And then just making a long story short, while I was in college, I also fished some Bass Nation events, and I was able to qualify for a couple of Bass Nation national championships. And then about a year or two after I graduated from college, I signed up and fished the Opens, the Bassmaster Southern Opens. And I just had a really fortunate year that year. Things happened on the water that still I don't see how I did it. Like it was almost as if God was paving the way for me to go to the Elite Series. And I don't mean to like say that jokingly. I mean that's kind of how I feel.
Right.
Because like for instance, my first Bassmaster Open I ever fished, on the second day, I caught the biggest bass of my life and I caught the biggest bag of my life all the way up until now. Like I've still never taught that. Like
Wow.
I caught a 9 pound 12 ounce. So that's my
Wow.
PB. And then I caught a 30 pound 15 ounce bag. That was my
Oh
literally
man.
that was my second day ever of fishing the Bassmaster.
Wow. You're like, this is easy. This is easy. This is gonna be
Yeah, I
easy.
was just like, what? No, honestly, it was like happening, and I was just like, what is happening right now? Like, it was just like crazy because I mean, I was just a kid that just fished in some college events, and I had never like done anything like that. I mean, I had caught a few 20 pound bags in my life, but never nowhere close to 30.
Wow.
Like.
Yeah.
And so I got a top 10 in that first one, and then the second one, like I did even better on Lake Norman. I got a top 5 in that one, and I was just like, it was just I don't know, man. It was just one of those crazy years. So I actually qualified for the Elite Series that first year, and I'm not saying that I'm that good, because I'm not. I just got very fortunate that year because my brother, which I think that he's just as good of a fisherman as I am, he tried to qualify for the elites like several years on the opens and just was never fortunate enough to just make it happen, because back then there was only 3 events per division, so
Right.
you
Yeah.
couldn't stumble at any of them. You had to have 3 really good events to make it. And yeah, I just kind of got on that roll and had 3 awesome events, and then I was like, oh man, so now I gotta come up with $40,000 so I can afford to fish the Bassmaster Elite Series. So
You mean the money just doesn't roll in? It just doesn't crawl up in your boat? Like, a lot of guys believe that. They believe, oh
no.
yeah, they give it to all those guys. And that's one of the biggest misnomers of professional fishermen. I have buddies of mine, they think, oh, well, yeah, they just throw baits at them and they just throw money at them all the time. And that's really not the case a lot of times. Let me tell you, this is before I forget this story. So every time I have ever think about the most adventurous time I've ever had in a boat, okay, it was with you. All right. And you think you know where I'm going with this, but
Oh,
so
yeah.
we're down at the Sabine River and you decide that you're going to take a risk. You're going to go somewhere. You found a place way up. I mean, way up. And we take off in your boat. And I promise you, folks, I say this a lot and I make jokes about this a lot, but I recommitted my life like 14 times to Jesus while he was riding. We were going up that river. And I remember one time I just laid in the bottom of the boat like that. And you said, hey man, what's wrong? And I said, they say when you're about to die that you should just go limp and it won't hurt as bad. And you started laughing. But we went way up the Sabine River and up there. And man, I mean, it was just a huge one. That's the longest I've ever run in a bass boat before, at one time. And you got up there and that area turned out to be like the winning area. You had found a winning area, but unbeknownst to you, a guy named Jason Christie had found it too. And, we got up there and I remember,
Yeah.
man, you caught you stayed out at the mouth of that place and you caught like 11 in a row. I mean, it was just bam, bam, bam. I mean, they were just loaded in there. That was quite a run.
Yeah, that was an interesting deal. Like I found that creek on Google Earth. I was looking on Google Earth trying to find somewhere that hadn't been fished, because I want to say that's our 4th time fishing the Sabine River, and pretty much every area had been uncovered and had been seen on Bassmaster Live and stuff. And so I was just looking at all the rivers, and I was like, well, guys that fish there, guys that fish there. And I was like, well, how far north can I go on the Sabine River? Like how far can you go, like to where you don't run out of gas? And so
Right.
I was doing the math and I was calculating the mileage as I went up the river. And I was like, I think I could make it up here and back And I found that creek, and so I went up there the first day of practice, and it was just loaded. And I was like, I don't think I've ever done this before, but I called Chad Pipkins. He's about the only guy I talk to
Yeah.
frequently on the water during practice. And I called Chad, and I was like, dude, I found the winning area. And he was like, no. And I was like, yes, dude. I said, it may not be me that wins this. I said, I hope it's me, but this is the winning area. And he was like, dude, that's so cool, yada yada. And so that was the first day of practice. And so what do you do the day 2 of practice and day 3 of practice when you've already found the winning area? You know what I mean? So I really didn't know how to spend my time, because I knew that was where it was going to be won. So what I did is I made that run. It was such a treacherous run. I made that run, I think maybe 2 more days. And I literally put waypoints on every single hazard that I could, see. So most of it was stumps, a lot of it was log jams, some of it was sandbars, but it was literally the most treacherous run I've ever made. And so there was literally hundreds of icons on my map of like, I gotta sit my boat down here. I have to idle for that half a mile stretch. There's 7 stumps along the way you got to dodge, and then you can run another quarter mile. You got to sit down here, and so that's what you got to experience was zigzagging in and out of those stumps, the standing trees. I mean, it was crazy, and then what happened from practice to the first day of the tournament, the water had fallen a little bit. So more hazards came up that I didn't even know about. I think we hit a few times.
We did. We hit a couple. One time I remember going, whoa, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, you're like, man, that was kind of hard. So I make it all the way up there. I think I was like boat 50 or 60 or something. And so I made it all the way up there, and like I just assumed it was just me and you. Like I had no clue. So I was just fishing at a slow pace, just because I knew like, hey, let's take it slow. This is the winning area. Let's just catch the fish and get back. And so I was just kind of sneaking up through there, catching a lot of fish. I just didn't catch any real big ones on that first day. But like you said, I was catching lots of fish. I think I caught 10 in a row on that first spot.
Yeah, I was filming that.
And, I don't know what time it was, but it was probably only about 10:30 or 11 o'clock that day. And Jason Christie's coming out of the creek. And like me and you were like,
I remember both of you. I remember both of y'all's looks. Y'all both went.
Yeah,
both of you kind of went like that. So,
I was like, no way, because I thought, based on my calculations, I thought that you had to have at least a 50-gallon gas tank to even get up there.
Right. Yeah.
And like, and his aluminum boat, I think, had like a 43 or 45-gallon tank. Right. And so I was like, how did you get up here?
Yeah. Well, that was cool. It was cool that you guys, got together and talked and worked it out. And that's the way it is, in that sport. You just never know, what's going to happen. But that was a fascinating day for me. I learned so much, just by that. And that was crazy. That was a crazy, crazy run up there. So, well, let's shift gears here. And now, when I talk to people about their faith, man, there's so many different kinds of testimonies. And that's what I love about talking to guys when I ask them about how they come to faith in Christ. There's some guys that they came to faith, through some kind of big dramatic deal. They came out of drugs. They came out of this life, or some of them just went to church and realized, and some of them got saved and they were really old. But you got kind of a different testimony. You were saved at a very young age. Tell us a little bit about how you came to faith.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk about that, we've been talking about testimonies a lot the last year or so. Right. At your focus meetings, and I've always, and I've asked you this. I'm like I don't have that exciting, life-changing testimony that some of these guys have, where they were on drugs and then they got clean, or they went to prison, like those are the cool stories. And so I've always kind of struggled, like what do I tell people? I was saved at a young age. I was very lucky to have Christian parents that that, taught me about Jesus at a very young age. And so I've always just tried to figure out like what do I need to, what do I need to tell people to try to impact, some people's
Right.
lives. And I've been kind of, wrestling with that this year, because I've had several opportunities to speak at, at different events, whether it's churches or tournaments, and then also here on your podcast.
Yeah.
And so the Meet the Pros night that we had at the Bassmaster Classic,
Right.
It was a few days before the Classic started. I guess it was at your home church.
Yeah, it's my home church. Yeah, Brushy Creek Baptist in Taylor's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I was, up until that point, I was like, I don't even know if I want to speak at that event. And so I kept talking to you about it. And so kind of at the last minute, I said, yeah, I gave you a thumbs up. And I think you were in the crowd, and I was like, I'm going to speak. And so they passed the mic off to me, and I just kind of, said a few words that was on my heart. And so I left that event, and I was like, I wonder if that like impacted anybody at all, because we were all following Nick LeBrun's testimony, which is unbelievable.
He's got one of those, I was like this, but now I'm like this, stories.
Yeah. And so he was kind of like the headliner of the event, if you will. And so we were all kind of following him. And so I was just thinking, like, man, I was like, I bet a lot of people got impacted from what Nick said, and then I kind of left that event thinking, I wonder if anybody even, cared about what I had to say. And so all the way up until this point, I've actually kind of given the same testimony, if you will, several different times.
Right.
I did it at a Fishers of Men tournament and stuff like that. And so I was wondering, I was like, is this what I need to be telling people, And so at ICAST just a couple of weeks ago, a college angler came up to me, and he was like, Brandon, he said, I went to the Meet the Pros event at the week of the Bassmaster Classic at Brushy Creek Baptist, and he said what you said spoke to me, and he said I struggle with the same stuff that you did. And he said that just really impacted me.
Wow.
I was like, holy cow, like, because I had been trying to figure out, maybe I should be telling people like something else. There's so many different things we can talk about.
Right.
And so we're always trying to figure out like what's the impactful thing, because I could talk about days in my college, I could talk about now, I could talk about anything in my life, but that right there, that let me know, like, hey, this is what I should probably be talking about, because this guy, as I was kind of praying to God about it, like, he literally, like a college kid, he just came up to me, and I was like, man, that is awesome.
Man, that is awesome. Wow. Whenever that comes up, I tell people all the time that, we love the dramatic testimonies, but if you've got a testimony, with you were small, you're caring about your church, and just at a young age, you came to know Jesus. You asked your mom and dad, hey, what do I need to do? And they led you, and that tells you a couple of things. Number one, everybody's testimony is important. There's always somebody that can relate to where you are. And number two, how important it is for parents to evangelize their children. That's an awesome privilege that we get a chance to do, is to be able to lead our kids to faith. And that's awesome. That's a great deal.
Yeah. So yeah, I can kind of just recap what I said
you share whatever you want to do.
Yeah. So basically what it is, what I said that night, and this is kind of what I'm telling people now when I have the opportunity to speak, was, like we've already talked about, very fortunate to have Christian parents, was saved at a very young age. And so, obviously I told the story of how I qualified for the Elite Series. That first year in the Opens, it just felt like God was kind of paving the way for me. Now, whether that was, and some people can take things out of context and stuff. I don't think God literally like put these fish in my boat, but that was just kind of like the feeling, like hey, like I want you on the Elite Series,
Right. Yeah.
there's a place for you on the Elite Series. I just felt like that would, be an opportunity for me to talk about God and to be able to impact people's lives,
Right.
for the Lord. And so I just kind of felt like that was going to be my platform. And so then, my first year on the Elite Series, like, it was a blast, obviously, having the time of my life. And, I had a pretty successful first year. I won Rookie of the Year. And so everything was like going good. And then, so my sophomore year on the Elite Series, I had several top tens, but I had several bombs too. And, just it literally only took one or two bad events, and like I just started to like struggle with all kinds of self-doubt.
Mm.
And like I was thinking like I'm not good enough. And even after winning the Rookie of the Year the year before, and actually I started my sophomore year with two top tens, the first two events. But it was about the middle of the season on my second year on tour. I had a couple of really bad events, and like I just started to doubt. And I was like I'm not good enough. Like this is not where I should be. Like I'm not as good as these other guys. And I just started struggling with so much self-doubt, and it just kind of like it kind of snowballed, honestly. And so it started that second year, and it kind of led into like the third and fourth year. And I was in this slump and wasn't doing any good at all. And I really think a lot of it was just my confidence was at zero, and I just didn't think I was good enough to be out there. And I mean, you can't compete at any high level if you don't have the confidence, that you're good
Right.
enough to be
Yeah.
there. I mean, let's
Right.
let's face it. I mean, there's no NBA player out there trying to make a game-winning free throw, and he's like, I'm not good enough to be in the NBA. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and so really, it just like I said, it snowballed into like several just really bad years, and it was just and it got in my head, and I just started to like I was kind of like thinking like maybe God doesn't want me here anymore. Maybe there's somewhere else that God wants me. Maybe I should go back to doing landscaping again, or you know what I mean. And it's like I just kind of had this deal where I was just kind of wrestling with it in my mind. And really I just lost sight of why God had me on the Elite Series from the start. Like the reason he had me on the Elite Series from the start was that was going to be my platform to be able to be a light for him, to be able to meet a kid at a weigh-in, and like maybe impact his life in a positive way. Or
Right.
meet some guy at a truck stop, and he's talking about his childhood fishing with his dad. Like there's all kinds of like things that happen
Right.
on the road or on the water or off the water. And a lot of those things are awesome. I mean, they're uplifting. They're things that we need to be doing for the Lord. And I totally just lost sight of all that. And I was just solely focused on, man, I finished 86th event, or I finished 86th place at the last event. And the event before that, I finished 57th. And, it's like I was just so focused on the results in my tournaments, and that was it. Like I just lost sight of this tremendous platform that I had, for the Lord. And so it took me several years to like really kind of get all that, sorted through, and to be able to just, just to give it back to the Lord, and just like say, hey, whether I get kicked out of the Elite Series or whether I stay on the Elite Series, this is for you, Lord. I'm just going to try to enjoy the ride. I'm going to have fun, and I just want to be a light for you. And so that's kind of what I said to the Lord, and said to myself 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, it's been so much more enjoyable. I actually enjoy my job now. It's not it's not one of those things where you're just like kind of dreading it. And so it's just it's brought back the love of the game. And then it's just I feel like I'm doing better on the water now, and it's just it. I mean, and like, don't get me wrong, it's not all super easy peasy. I
Right.
mean, even this year, I've had like 3 bombs this year, and so I'm like, just kicking and scratching, trying to make the classic, because next year's Bassmaster Classic is in Knoxville.
Yeah. So you got to get there. Yeah.
And so the last Knoxville Bassmaster Classic, I actually didn't qualify for. And so this is the second one in the history of Bassmaster to be in Knoxville, which is obviously like 30 minutes from where I grew up. And so even this season, I've just kind of had some bombs, and even like after getting past the self-doubt, and I've had like 3 or 4 years where I've just had my confidence has been in the Lord, and
Right. Yeah.
it's been all good from that standpoint. This year, when I had like those 3 bombs back to back to back, the self-doubt started to kind of seep back in again. And it's kind of ironic, like how that happens. But
Yeah. What your story reminds me of is, when Peter, there's a story in the Bible where Peter and the disciples are in a boat, and they're professional fishermen. They're the guys that do it for a living. Big storm comes up, and they're it says the waves are buffeted, and they look out and they see Jesus walking on the water. Well, Peter says, Lord, if that's really you, tell me to walk on the water. And Peter, he says, come. And Peter gets out, walks on water. He's looking at Jesus and he's walking on the water. But then all of a sudden, he starts realizing where he is, and all these waves are around me, and he starts to doubt, and he starts to sink, and he goes, Lord, help me. And it says Jesus immediately reached up. And man, there's and your story reminds me of that. As long as we keep our focused on Christ, we're going to be doing and able to do the things that he's called us to do. It's when we start looking at our circumstances. I know, with my deal, with my wife passing away and stuff, it's going to be easy to say, golly, I can get depressed, I can get down. And I do have those moments. I have had those, just like you had doubts. I have, guys, is this what I'm, should I still do this, or should I, whatever. And, but keeping your eyes on Christ. And that's exactly what you said, is that, when you got your focus back on him, then everything else takes care of itself. So that's a good story.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And so after I guess after my 3rd bomb this season, which was Lake Fork, and Lake Fork is my favorite.
Yeah, that's your lake, man. Yeah.
When people ask me what is your favorite tournament lake, I don't hesitate. I'll say Lake Fork. Yeah. And so this year, I mean, like, it was the same time of year that I've had 2 other top 5s. I mean, like, I was just going in with like confidence sky high. Right. I didn't even care about the previous 2 tournaments. I had a bomb at Chickamauga, I had a bomb at Santee. I didn't even care about that, because I was like, I'm going to my lake. I'm going to Lake Fork. I'm going to be able to put those 2 bad tournaments behind me. We're going to get the train back on the tracks. Everything's going to be good. And I go down there and I have the worst tournament of the year. And so that's when it hit me. I was like, man, that's my lake right there. And I finished 86th place or whatever. And so yeah, it's just like funny, like it don't take much. And like, for me, and the self-doubt just comes back. And so after that event, I was talking to Kelly, my wife, I was talking to my brother, my dad, all that. And so I even called Jay Yellis. I think I talked to you on the phone. And so thankfully we had several weeks off, and I was able to get my mind right again before heading off to Pickwick. And I'm so thankful for, I think we had 3 weeks off, because it took me all the way probably up until the end of that 3 weeks to kind of get my mind back on, like, hey, whether I make next year's classic or not, like it's up to the Lord. Like, whether I'm fishing in it or whether I'm not, it's going to be okay. Like worst case, I miss next year's Bassmaster Classic and I get to hang out with the fans at the expo for 3 days. Like, that's not too bad. You know what I mean? So I was able to just take all that pressure I was putting on myself. Like, you got to make the Knoxville Classic. You got to make it. You know what I mean? And like that was, I just had so much weight on my shoulders the whole first half of this season, just for that simple fact that I did not want to miss another Knoxville Bassmaster Classic. Now I'm just kind of thinking like, hey, if I make it, that's awesome. If I don't, like, it's not that big of a deal. And so that's kind of how I fished the last two events, and that's how I'll fish the next two. And of course, I'm going to fish as hard as I possibly can. Like, I want to win these tournaments just as bad as anybody, but
Right.
I don't want that to be like my sole focus. I want my focus to be on everything else. Like, obviously Jesus being a lot for him, and then everybody that I get to meet along the way. That's my focus, and then let the chips fall where they may on the results of the event.
That's awesome, man. That really is. Okay, we've come to the point on the show where I don't know if you've forgotten about this or not, or just seen this a couple of times, where we get you to imitate another Bass Pro. If you got another Bass Pro that you can imitate, realizing that that's the greatest form of flattery. If you want to do, we've had people do Tommy Biffle, Cliff Crochet. Cliff Crochet's he's one that everybody likes to imitate, but we've had a lot. Hank Parker actually did Roland Martin, and so that was pretty good.
Oh man, you put me on the spot here.
Yeah, sorry, man. Sorry about that. So
let's see. Well, so I'm going to do a tribute.
Okay, do a tribute. Yeah,
to Ken Cook.
Ken Cook. How about that? Yeah, Ken Cook,
so,
former Fisher's biologist, former classic champion, Ken Cook. And so let's hear Ken Cook, the late great Ken Cook.
I'll tell you the backstory first. So my brother and I, like I said, we've been obsessed with bass fishing at a very young age, and there was several high school friends that were the same, and we loved watching bass fishing. Right. I almost think even now I might like watching bass fishing better than I like to bass fish. So like I'm a fan first, and then I'm an angler second. And so for some reason there was a tournament on the Mississippi River. It was an FLW event, and I think Gary Klein won that event. They launched him out of Memphis, literally downtown Memphis, and these guys are making like extreme runs, to go to these backwater oxbows and stuff. And that tournament, like how it was produced, it was Jerry McInnes and all those guys, but how they produced that show, that was my favorite show. It was my brother's favorite show, and it was my buddy Roger's favorite show. And like we watched that one show, we watched it like there's no telling how many times.
Over and over.
30 times or something. And so we quote exact catches from Rick Klein on that. Yeah. We quote Gary Klein, how he's driving his boat, and he's running through this deal, and he's like, I think we can make it on in. So we like quote all that too. But what we loved more than anything from that show was Ken Cook, how when he caught a bass, literally every time he was like, yeah, bass. Yeah, bass. And we were like, and the first time he said it, we were like, what did he say? And then he said it again, and we were like, he said, yeah, bass. And
yeah, so bass.
Like, yeah. And so we were like, what a cool like catchphrase. When you catch a fish, just say, yeah, bass.
I tell you, everybody loved Ken Cook. I tell you, he was a great ambassador for the sport of bass fishing. And I remember him watching him sight fish, and then he'd tell all about the biology part of the bass. He'd tell everything about why these fish are doing this and why it has this line on it, why all that stuff. So that's a cool deal. Well, man, this has been awesome.
But yeah, I want to kind of say a little bit more about that.
Go. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So it's kind of funny, like Ken, he in kind of his country voice, he'd be like, yeah, bass, kind of like that. But it evolved from where like I would say it on the water, my brother would say it, and then Roger, my buddy, would say it, till we were literally screaming, yeah, bass. It was like we took it to a whole nother level, and we did that for years and years and years. It was so much fun.
Yeah, bass. I'm gonna have to yell that out at you at the next event. So well, we got an event coming up. We can't talk about the fishing there, but we're going all the way to South Dakota, and that's going to be a great trip, and a big lake out there, and it ought to be an interesting tournament out there. Then we finish up the year over in Wisconsin which
Yep.
everybody loves up at the headwaters of the Mississippi River. And so it's going to be a great times. And man, I appreciate you being my guest today. This has been great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, we could sit on here and talk for
Oh yeah.
hours.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I drove home with you one time from
Yeah.
New York, and man, it was so funny on the way up there. Me and a buddy of mine took your boat up there, and we pulled into some little place. I can't even remember where it was, but some dude came up and tried to attack me, just verbally, and he was screaming about how bad that racing boat is. And I kept telling him it's a bass boat, it's not a racing boat, it's not a racing boat. But so we've had some quite adventures. But yeah, we could talk about that all day. But man, I appreciate you being my guest, and look forward to seeing you over at South Dakota. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to the Basschaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. We hope that you will hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell on the subscribe button, tell your friends, share it around, and we'll see you next week on the Basschaplain Fishing Podcast. This is Chris Wells signing off.